Do you have a relation?
Magandang umaga po mga kaibigan. Welcome to our Wednesday Roundtable at Lido. Ngayon po namang Miyerkules Santo, mahalaga po ang pag-uusapan natin sapagkat pinakamalapit ito sa mga Pilipino sapagkat ayon sa mga pagsusuri, ang mga Pilipino ay rice and fish eaters. Sa consumption po naman ng mga Pilipino, sa hapagkainan, laging mayroong isda bukod sa kanin. So let's talk about fishing, fisheries, and the sea. Today, we're joined by Undersecretary for Fisheries, Undersecretary Cheryl Marie Caballero of the Department of Agriculture. We also have with us former Ambassador Alberto Encomienda, former Philippine Ambassador and Executive Director ng isa po namang think tank group. Kasama rin natin si Colonel Alejandro T. Flores, Pangulo ng Philippine Council for Foreign Relations at Chair at CEO ng Haribuan Foundation. At inaasahan natin si Dr. Mel Banlawi na makakasama rin ngayong umaga. But we're joined by Mr. Dennis Calvan, Senior Manager for Policy and Government Engagement ng Rare Philippines at founding member ng Pangingisda Natin Gawing Tama o Panagat. So let's start. Pag sinabi bang fisheries, Madam Undersecretary, ano po ang status ng Pilipinas ngayon? Sapagkat ayon sa pagsusuri, ang Pilipinas, ang mga Pilipino ay kumukonsumo ng 40 kilograms a year or 109 grams per day. Ito po sa hapagkainan for fish and fishery products. The total of 12.8%. Madam Undersecretary, how are things doing today?
Hello at sa iyong mga at sa ating mga panauhin at sa iyong mga tagapanood. Yes, is one of the top 8 producer in the world. So, ito yung mga highlights lang, no? Tayo ay nasa center ng marine biodiversity at ang ating bansa ay isa sa mga pinakamalaking exporter ng tuna, ng shrimps, at ng seaweeds. So in terms of local production, 50%, 50.4% comes from aquaculture. And the rest is from combined capture fisheries contributed by our municipal fisher folk and the commercial fisher folk. So basically, ganun yung konteksto ng ating kontribusyon sa ating pagkain. Sabi natin, yeah. So,
have you noticed any increase or decrease in production and consumption over the years?
Well, in 2018, a 2018 study done by CIFDEC shows that the per capita consumption per annum is at 40 kilos, 40 kilogram per year or 109 grams per day. But there were recent studies that says that bumaba ang ating consumption, nasa 36.8 kilograms per year per capita. So, be that as it may, we remain one of the fish eaters. And the consumption coming from, the supply coming from among the major fishery commodities, of course, we have recorded the highest fish supply. That is sardines at 1,902.42 metric tons. Ito ay bago lang na data na nakalap noong March 29, 2021. Atin po kasing minomonitor kung ano yung availability ng ating isda nationwide. And 33.98% was recorded by BFAR. This is followed by tilapia at 874.51 metric tons for March 29 or 15.62%. Then round scad at 559.85 metric tons or 10% share. And milkfish at 559.84 metric tons or 10%. So this basically is the monitoring report ng ating BFAR as of 29 March. But in terms of the 5-year performance, of course, ibang usapin din ito. So we have that data to share with our listening public. Thank you.
Yeah, very good. Pero yung affordability ng isda, na monitor po ba ninyo? Can Filipinos still afford to buy fish?
Yes, surprisingly, of course, the contribution of aquaculture has always been noted. The tilapia has selling price wholesale is at 85 pesos, farm gate price that is, and some are landed in Navotas, 90 pesos ang na-monitor nila noong nakaraang linggo. Milkfish is being sold farm gate at 110, but landed wholesale in Navotas at 125. Dahil open season na po at dumadami ang ating huli, no, sa capture fishery, ang galunggong ay tumatakbo sa 160. Samantalang ang imported bumaba na din mula sa 300 pesos, ito ay pumapalo na sa 200 to 240 based on the monitoring report of our marketing office in BFAR.
Mm-hmm. And gaano kalayo ang kailangang lakbayin ng mga mangingisda para makahuli ng isda na mabibili sa pamilihan?
Well, dalawang punto yan. Alam naman natin na ang fisheries natin ay nakaangkla sa dalawang sources. Capture fisheries or hunting, and pangalawa ay yung ating aquaculture or fish farming. So kung tayo ay titingin sa capture fisheries, of course meron tayong nanggagaling sa municipal fisherfolk, and based on the study conducted, they have contributed higher production followed by our commercial fisher folk. So kung ito ay ating mga under normal circumstances, sila ay mangingisda sa 15-kilometer zone mula doon sa shoreline, or doon sa amin kasi Melo, taga Pangasinan ako, ano, umaabot sila hanggang malapit na doon sa Baho de Masinloc. So nakakalabas din ang ating mga mangingisda hanggang doon sa lugar na yon. So it really depends on how available the fish catch is. And nabanggit mo na rin, napakahalagang tignan natin sa capture fisheries ang ating conservation and sustainability measures para masiguro tayo na hindi tayo nag-overfishing at sinisiguro natin na ang ating supply ay hindi lang para sa present generation but for our younger generations as well.
Okay, napakaganda ng binanggit nyo, pero meron akong nakita ron na sinasabi Baho de Masinloc. Anong klaseng mga mangingisda ang nakakarating doon sa may Baho de Masinloc?
Iba-iba naman. Actually, nandun din ang ating mga kapwa Pilipino, no? In fact, doon na kukuha yung mga masasarap na isda. And it includes also our some commercial, but most are our small fisher folk. Nakakarating po sila doon, dala nung kanilang pamilyar, no? That's a traditional fishing ground for them. And so they frequent the place as well.
Yeah. I do recall some years ago, natanong ko yung isang taga Bureau of Fisheries and Aquatic Resources. Sabi ko, hindi ba pwedeng magpatrolya yung BIFAR doon sa may Baho de Masinloc? Sabi niya, alam mo, meron sa sasakyan namin, baka papunta pa lang doon, hindi na makabalik dahil ubos na yung crudo. Anyway, we will talk about that later. Pero, I don't know, siguro nabago na rin yung sitwasyon, pero we will talk about it in detail in just a very short while. Pero bago tayo magtungo doon sa mga dalubhasa pa natin, let me ask Dennis Calvan, yung founding member ng Panagat, ano ang masasabi mo doon sa sitwasyon ngayon ng ating pangisdaan? Dennis?
Sige sir, thank you sir Melo, and unang-una siguro greet din ako sa ating mga panauhin, kay Yusek Ching, magandang umaga po. At tungkol po sa status ng fisheries, ang maipe-present ko lang po yung sa municipal capture fisheries, since most of our member organizations are focused on helping coastal LGUs as well as those municipal folk, those who are using less than 3 gross tons. No? So based on the Philippine Statistics Authority as well as BFAR's report, may decrease in terms of capture fisheries production for municipal fisher folk, no? If I kung mag-present lang ako, magbanggit ako ng figures based sa report from 2016 to 2018, from 1.13 million metric tons, bumaba ito to 1.10 metric tons. No? And then there's an increase from 2018 to 2019, and then another significant decrease from 2019 to 2020. No? And then aside from that decrease in municipal fisheries capture production, magandang figure then coming from a lot of government's report is our response to the poverty incidents. No? Based still on sa Philippine Statistics Authority, there is a significant decrease in poverty incidents among municipal fisheries, no? From 36.9% in 2015, actually I think in 2016 as high as 40% yung poverty incidence sa fisher folk. Pero in 2018, very significant decrease, no? Nag 26.2% tayo sa fisheries in terms of poverty incidence, and these are very good positive developments, and I think what one of our na sinusulong natin is malaman natin kung ano yung ginawa natin na tama in order to make that significant decrease, make that dent doon sa poverty incidence.
Okay. Maganda yung binanggit mo, Dennis, pero let me ask you, to which factors would you attribute the decrease in poverty incidence? Because it's been pictured that the poorest of the poor come from rural fisher folks.
Yeah.
What happened? Ano yung magic wand na ginawa natin?
Yeah. Actually, that's also, sir, one of our questions, and may ilang mga attributing factors na nakita kami. For instance, although there's a decrease in fish catch production, there's also an increase in the value of the fisheries. So either it's attributed to the value addition or tumaas talaga yung price ng isda. Mm-hmm. And pangalawa, there's also what we call yung pantawid pamilya. No? I think that's also one of the factors that can be attributed to the decrease in poverty incidence, and as well of course other government programs, no, like what BIFAR is doing, may mga livelihood programs, may fish gear, both distribution that help small scale fisher folk in terms of increasing their income sources. No?
Okay.
Those are the things that we think are attributing factors to the decrease in poverty incidence in small scale. But of course, marami pa tayong dapat gawin. No? Yeah.
Okay, maganda yan. Noong mga dekada 90, ako'y nasa radyo pa, pag mayroong mga report na bumababa yung poverty incidence, ang tanong ko ganito, yung kayang mahihirap nangamatay na o nag-abroad, dahilan sa nabawasan. Pero kung titingnan naman natin, marami pang factors na dapat i-consider. So it's really worth looking into kung ano ang naging dahilan. Naging susi ba yung kanilang produksyon para umangat ang buhay? At yung pantawid pamilya, kung ganon, it may take forever. No? Kailangan nilang tumanggap ng ayuda for a long period of time. Right? Well, that's policy anyway. Yes, Dennis, your thoughts about it?
Yeah, the 4-piece actually tinitingnan din namin how that would impact dun sa small scale fisheries. So, kaya tinitingnan din namin, sir, yung among the registered fisher folk, yung 1.9 million na registered na municipal fisher folk, ilan dun ang kasama sa RSBSA registry, na kung saan siya naman yung basihan ng 4-piece. And hopefully we could have that conversation with the national government in order to establish the link of 4-piece to the decrease in poverty incidence among fisher folk. No? But that's only one. No? And we, as I've said, marami programs yung ating government that we think have contributed to the decrease in poverty incidence, no? Especially we have the 1.9 million registered fisher folk, and I think yung targeted na reduction program ng government would come into handy nga dun sa pag-resolve sa poverty incidence.
Okay. We're joined by Colonel Alejandro Flores from the Philippine Council for Foreign Relations. Sinasabi po, Colonel, na mahalaga ang papel ng karagatan, whether it's called the South China Sea or West Philippine Sea. Pero anong tingin ninyo, are we doing our best para pakinabangan ang resources sa ating exclusive economic zone? Yes, please. Paki-unmute lang po.
Maraming salamat, Melo.
Good morning.
Good morning sa mga kasama kong nagkikipag-interact sa iyo, and also to our audience.
Yes, please.
Sa pananaw kasi ng Philippine Council on Foreign Relations, and siguro isama ko na rin yung pagiging kasama ko sa Hariban Foundation. The South China Sea hosts a big portion of the Coral Triangle, which is one of the richest coral reef formations with the highest diversity in the whole world. And as such, very important siya. And the coral reefs are actually parang sanctuary of small fish. Siguro pati yung they also afford feeding and reproduction. The problem of wanton destruction of our coral reef formations might dislocate the life cycle of our marine life. Actually, Philippines may problem like about it needs about 20% to be of its coral reef to be rejuvenated, and it is the Kalayaan Island Group with its huge 325,000 hectare area and coral reef formations that can provide, or at least can complement the lack of 20% parang ng panghihina ng ating coral reef inland. Especially with this South China Sea as our complementary coral reef reserve to supplement our depleted or enervated coral reef formations inland or close to our fjords, we expect that we will be able to sustain the cycle of the food cycle that stretches from our South China Sea to Malaysia, Indonesia, the Solomon Islands, up to Timor-Leste. And yung cycle na yun is what actually makes very profitable yung what our fishermen, not only ours but also other countries, especially those fishing for tuna in the areas. And unfortunately, if we allow some scientists know rather that the depletion of some of these species in the hierarchy of the food chain can result into serious or catastrophic consequences, if not existential. So yun ang concern namin from the viewpoint of Haribon. On the other hand, sa amin sa Council on Foreign Relations, these reasons it is becoming a superpower, and they have launched or at least claimed a lot virtually the whole of South China Sea as theirs, or due to historical or at least unacceptable 9-line claims. Mm-hmm. And as such, they have created what we call the Sanxia district that controls the three sands. Siya kasi means ano sand sa China. These are the Nanxia, Songxia, and the other one is I think yung Xixia. And so all of these islands are now being transformed or at least strengthened to become to host facilities. Perhaps as of the moment they are not necessarily military, but it is very easy to transform them into military bases. And as such, you can just imagine that a future with these facilities armed with military capabilities, China will be able to really control or dominate the South China Sea. The presence of 220 vessels in our area signify that that amount or the great number of resources being deployed in our area seems to have the go signal of the highest authorities. Recently, China has met or at least convened its National People's Congress, and also they have approved the 14th five-year economic plan. And so as such, it can also be inferred that what is happening now has the go signal or at least the knowledge of some of the top leadership of China.
Okay.
So we should prepare for the worst. We thought that China will be very resolute in enforcing or at least in trying to achieve its objective in the South China Sea. Meanwhile, we have to prevent further deterioration of our economic and environmental rights and be able to uphold a respectable position of our country in the community of nations. That's our concern, Mr.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Colonel. Si Ambassador Alberto Encomienda is an expert on the law of the sea and being a former ambassador to Malaysia, to Greece, and other countries, and being knowledgeable in the law of the sea. I'd like to get your inputs to the discussions because the presence of some 220 fishing vessels in a reef within the exclusive economic zone is worrisome for a lot of Filipinos. Mr. Ambassador, good morning and welcome to the discussions. Paki-unmute lang po muna. Please have it unmuted. Okay, sandali po mga kaibigan. Okay, subukan natin one more time. Paki-unmute lang po. Si Dr. Romel Banlawi is already on board and we have some of the participants raising their hands. We'll give them the opportune time in just a short while. Yes, Mr. Ambassador, please unmute. Yes, good morning.
Hi,
Yes.
good morning. Good morning, Melo. And I want to greet all our participants and listeners a good morning, but a special good morning to Jen. I met, you call him Colonel Flores, but when I met him, we were addressing him General Flores. Okay.
Yeah.
And we are together in the Philippine Council of Foreign Relations. I have not been very active in that area anymore, but we knew each other. I want to greet him a good morning today.
Yeah.
Now,
Morning.
and my take on the discussions ngayon is a bit okay. First, a background on where I have been. Of course, the law of the sea training in policy and formulation and good. But my last post in the Department of Foreign Affairs was as the Secretary General of the Maritime and Ocean Affairs Office, you know, and that is a cabinet. That is the secretariat of a cabinet level grouping relating to all aspects of maritime security for the Philippines. That includes fisheries, no? But I have to mention that because while we are talking about fisheries now, my comments can probably go in and out, as also General Flores was inclined to do because of where he is coming from Philippine Council on Foreign Relations. Now, let me begin my own take. Number one, I have to start with the point that the Philippines is an archipelagic state.
Mhm.
And it is very strategically located, that it is the center of geopolitical competition. But more than that, this is what is of interest to us. It is, as Undersecretary mentioned also, taking from the scientist Dr. Carpenter, that the Philippines is the center of marine diversity, uh, shore-fish biodiversity in the world. General Flores also mentioned the Coral Triangle. Ang ating archipelagic state ang pinakasentro sa lahat na bagay na yan. Kaya mabigat ang dating sa atin. Now, katabi natin is the South China Sea. And that is, of course, so many archipelagos there. And also, shall we say, I read a book which calls the South China Sea the most important body of water in the world for quite a few reasons, including strategic, including food. But let me focus on the food aspect, because I read an article just a few days ago that the Department of Environment, in fact, is thinking of talking to China about data gathering in the South China Sea. The article concedes that we have a problem with China, but we cannot avoid talking to China simply because it is there, and it has a right to be there. Whatever you envision that right to be, it has a right to be there. Now, from where I was before, also in the Maritime Ocean Affairs Center in the Department of Foreign Affairs, precisely we had to look into these overall aspects of the Philippines being an archipelagic state, and especially when it comes to resources in relation to the South China Sea. Now, meron yung political aspect, our project before, because we undertook joint marine scientific research with Vietnam in the South China Sea. It was called before the JOMSRE, Joint Oceanographic Marine Scientific Research Expedition dash SCS, JOMSRE SCS. SCS, of course, is the South China Sea. Now, that did not really start out as something with a geopolitical connotation. That joint project between Vietnam and the Philippines was decided upon at the highest levels, the president of Vietnam before and President Ramos, when we had a mutual recognition of governments between Vietnam and the Philippines. And one of the projects that the two leaders agreed, and in fact, the most important project was this joint oceanographic marine scientific research expedition. What is it all about? It's about biodiversity that includes fisheries, Now, to digress a bit and to say something about that project from our side, our chief scientist was the Secretary Angel Alcala of the DNR before, but when he joined us, he was already retired. When this project went off, he was already retired, but he is, of course, he's a national scientist in relation especially to fisheries, and he headed the Philippine part of that JOMSRE. Now, I cannot miss mentioning the fact that number one, Secretary Alcala almost has no peer in that area. But number two, we were able to, moving forward, we were able to pull off a very successful joint project with Vietnam because Secretary Alcala refused to accept payment. Otherwise, it could not have happened. Wala akong budget. but he worked for us with all 4 cruises over a span of 6 years for free as our chief scientist. Now, the product of that project are all documented and published. It is with Secretary Alcala. Unfortunately, nothing has, it did not progress. Let me continue on that score. The Jomsre had 4, we call it research cruises, from, say, a point in the Philippines across South China Sea to a point in Vietnam, and 4 of those cruises. And after the 4th cruise, the scientists, incidentally, let me emphasize that this was conceptualized, planned, and executed by scientists. The governments of either country were there jointly only to provide policy guidance. So let me repeat: the concept, the research, and implementation and everything were done completely by scientists. Walang pakialam ang gobyerno. So you talk about science-based, you talk about scientific results. Hindi nakialam ang gobyerno except to provide policy support and of course yung logistical support. Now, mahaba yung istorya na yan, but I want to go to the point about conserving the seas, including fisheries, especially because China was mentioned. Okay, after the 4th cruise, again, we have nothing. The government had nothing to do with this, except to provide logistics and policy support. The scientists of both countries agreed na tama na yung 4 na back and forth Vietnam, Philippines. We have enough data. Now, the scientists decided, of course, among themselves, and conveyed to us, they want either to go north or to go south, beyond the back and forth, you know. Now, going north, that means going towards China. Now, even then, we began to sense that there could be problems. So, alternatively, the scientists decided that if there is a problem with China, then we go south. Okay? But the scientists, if they are asked the question, they would rather go north. For example, Secretary Alcala's reason for the Philippines, of course, there are important areas in the north, just to our northwest of the so-called Treaty of Paris lines. We were still using that as reference point sometimes. About northwest of the Treaty of Paris lines, close to Hainan Island, there are phenomena there which he calls upwelling or downwelling. And of course, these are upwelling and downwelling. I don't understand these things. I'm not a marine scientist. But the way it's explained, upwellings and downwellings are very rich in nutrients, which means, of course, fisheries. Now, so Secretary Alcala, and speaking for the Philippines, of course, would also prefer to go up north. We want to investigate those upwellings and downwellings. But again, let me repeat, if a seeming problem with China crops up, we go south. Anyway, I was charged to talk to the Chinese on whether China would join us in this effort. And I met with the Chinese through the Chinese embassy, and my gosh, they were very enthusiastic about it. So we began to, to bring in the Chinese scientists, of course, and China in the, and we were calling it the Jomsre Phase 2. Now, this might be very detailed, but I tell you, it's very important to be appreciated. So we went into Jomsre Phase 2, agree with China, trilateral this time, and we began preparations for Phase 2.
And then what happened? Were you successful, Mr. Ambassador?
Melo?
Were you successful in
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. I'm sorry. As I explained, I wanted to be very detailed because it has a lot of implications. But if you want me to jump to that to the future, yes, it was very. I mean, the Jomsre was very successful. We were going into phase 2 with China. We were able to complete the preparations. Scientists ang gumagawa niyan, wala kami pakialam, very, very quickly. Now, I'm sorry to go into some details here because we are talking about China, how evil China is. Now, when when I mentioned this to China, they were very enthusiastic. They said they want to join. Now, so we had to go into phase 2 preparations, and everything was advanced on the phase 1 part. So China we shared the data with China. We began planning, and so the first meeting happened in Manila. First meeting pa lang, preparatory meeting, practically 90% of the preparations was complete. Again, wala kaming pakialam dyan. It was just the scientists. I'm sorry, but I have to keep repeating that. Okay, para alis talaga yung political color. Now, after Manila, the decision was to go to Da Nang, Vietnam, to complete the final 10%. When we informed in that meeting to discuss this, China objected. China's objection was, no, we have to be part of the preparations. So the second meeting was decided to be in Guangdong province, in Guangzhou, and there was a lot of interactions between the scientists of the three countries. They got a lot of information, educated among themselves, and more than that, we were already shown to the marine scientific research prepared by China. Believe it or not, that marine scientific research vessel is 4 times longer than our own, which was from the
Spanish
Namria.
government.
Yes, that's right. From the Namria.
Yeah.
Yes, that was from the Spanish government. At any rate, we were toured and everything. Now, final preparation, it was just to have been cosmetic. Basta matapos lang na, but it's really a diplomatic protocol that we missed also. That all participants, if they could, they must have a turn at hosting. That's why China insisted on hosting. Bakit sila hindi kasali? So second was done in China, completely finished. The third and final one in Da Nang was to have been just ceremonial and everything. But I would say unfortunately, I was already out at that point in time.
Okay.
I was taken out of the center. I was replaced by, the name Henry Bensurto,
Yeah.
and we withdrew from that. Okay, we aborted that third meeting in Da Nang. Meron din ako istorya dyan because of course I cannot help but keep tab of it. Secretary Alcala was there, and yan kasing preparations sa marine scientific research, you have to decide on, the scientists have to decide on cruise track, kung tawagin, saan pupunta. Okay? Yung tungkol sa Philippines, I'm sorry I have to emphasize this because that shows how either we are in bad faith or we're just thoroughly ignorant. Okay. So the first cruise trilateral with China was to have begun in Guangzhou province, go down south and park in one of the islands there, Babuyan Islands, one of those islands there for rest and whatever. Then they go down south to Subic, okay?
Okay.
And from Subic, cross over to Vietnam. That was the cruise track agreed. Tapos na yung usapan na yan. But in the first 2 meetings, kompleto na yan. In the final meeting in Da Nang, which was only supposed to be ceremonials, our side objected all of a sudden to the cruise track na napag-usapan
Okay.
Harapan na. And I have to emphasize this because the reason given by the Philippines was it goes inside our exclusive economic zone. What is the problem there? Now, there is no problem because that exclusive economic zone in the first place is high seas. We did that with Vietnam also, both ways.
Okay.
But the final point, and I will stop here, that is not just a simple matter of doing research between the two countries. As we progress between Vietnam and the Philippines, this is very important. I would like this to be highlighted. Both countries on the political side decided to put the Jomsre, and that later, of course, with China, under UNCLOS Part 9. UNCLOS Part 9 is, of course, rules-based. It is under UNCLOS, which calls riparian states of any of enclosed, semi-enclosed seas to cooperate in any aspect of governance they can agree upon, And we decided to start on marine scientific research, but that is already under UNCLOS Part 9, and it all stopped. After that, the administration of
President Ramos.
It was completed under President Ramos. When we began with under Noynoy, that was when it was cut off.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Ambassador. We're joined by Commodore Armand Balilo of the Philippine Coast Guard. I'll be asking Professor Romel Banlawi of the Philippine Association for Chinese Studies. Dr. Banlawi, good morning and welcome. May we have your thoughts about what's going on? Dr. Banlawi? Uy, nawala si Romel. But anyway, let's hear from the Coast Guard. Commodore Balilo, good morning and welcome to the discussions. Commodore Balilo, where are you? Andito na si Commodore Balilo kanina. Subukan natin, mga kaibigan. Let's hear from the Philippine Coast Guard. Nawala. Okay. Mr. Paterno, good morning. You raised your hand. You'd like to say something? Yes, please.
Yeah, good morning. Actually, doon sa West Philippine Sea, the Philippines has been unable to develop the offshore fisheries. Okay? As early as 1986, we were telling government that to occupy in time and space the EEZ in the West Philippine Sea by developing offshore fisheries. There is hardly no commercial fishing operation done by the Philippines in the South China Sea. Well, the Muroami fishery dominated that activity up to the early 90s. When they ceased operation, commercial fishing in the South China Sea, the offshore South China Sea practically stopped. Most of the fishing operations now being done by Filipinos in the South China Sea are oversized mangkas, engaged in hook and line fishing, possibly dynamite. Those are the fishing vessels operating in the South China Sea. Unlike the Eastern Philippines, the Eastern Philippine fisheries has developed because of the tuna fisheries. So you have offshore commercial fisheries that done by the Philippines all the way to the PNG and Western Pacific. On the Eastern Seaboard, you have a lot of fishing activities. Sadly, in the South China Sea, that has not been developed at all.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you for the information. Dr. Banlawi, can we have you now? Yeah, Romel? Nawawala si Romel. Yes, Mr. Jonathan Dixon, I know you raised your hand a while ago. Yes, please. What would you have to say about our discussions today?
Thank you, sir. Good morning.
You were once with BIFAR, right?
Good morning to everybody.
Yes.
Yes, sir. I would like to thank my friend Mark Guidote for the information, for joining this meeting. So, sir, bali ako po ay sa BIPAR, sa Fisheries Division. At alam ko po yung nangyayari po dyan sa West Philippine Sea or South China Sea tungkol sa pangisda. So mula dito sa offshore ng Pagudpod, offshore waters starting from Pagudpod up to southern part of Balabac dito sa Palawan, up to our 200 nautical miles natin.
Opo. Yes. Oh. You were saying something, Jonathan? Please go ahead. Is it the internet again? Oh. There must be something wrong somewhere.
Sir?
Yes, go ahead. Go ahead po. Uy. Something is going on. Sandali lang po mga kaibigan. Let's try another Wi-Fi connection. Sandali lang mga kaibigan, you know, it's Murphy's Law. If it will go wrong, it will. Let's give it a try.
Melo, may I say something while waiting for Dr. Banlawi? Yusek Ching. Yeah.
I guess we're on the air.
Yeah. Yeah, as member of the National Task Force on West Philippine Sea, I represent the DA as Undersecretary for Fisheries. There will be a statement that will be sent out today. I don't know if it's already out by now, but it takes note of the diplomatic protest by the DFA and the reduction on the number of Chinese maritime militia vessels dispersed in the Kalayaan group of islands. So in March 7, it was noted that there were around 220. Then it was reduced to around 183 in the March 22 report. And it's now down to 44 as of March 29 report. So there's been a conscious effort of the various government agencies to really, of course, strengthen our presence in the area to safeguard our fisher folk and ensure our territorial integrity and national patrimony. So these efforts now to be done not only by our military group, but primarily the purpose of putting in our research component and the fishing component as part of our assertion that we have the right to fish in this area. And as of date, the report based on our diplomatic protest by the DFA from 200 nga, sabi ko kanina, it was already reduced to around 44 cmm. And we continue to file this protest until such time that they really free up those areas that is rightfully ours. Thank you.
Madam Undersecretary, merong sources kasi napaalis si Foreign Secretary Teddy Locsin at patungo sa Beijing. Mukhang kasama yung ilang mga foreign ministers ng iba pang Asian countries. Now, I tweeted him but he has not responded yet. Probably he's leaving for Beijing. But definitely, ano po yung inyong pananaw dito? You're alarmed by the presence of these vessels in our exclusive economic zone?
Well, I think this has been going on for the past several months or even years. It's just that now we are doing our concerted effort to of course assert our right and show our presence in the area. Dahil alam naman natin we are not going to do a head-on with China, considering that there are some considerations also that has to be considered, no. But having said that, the approach really is to do it on a diplomatic note and ensure that our syempre sa amin, we have to ensure that our fisher folk who are fishing in the area are properly secured and properly protected. That's why working with our Philippine Coast Guard as well as the Maritime Police would be part and parcel of our mechanism to do just that for our fisheries sector. Melo.
Okay. Pero kayo sa Bureau of Fisheries and Aquatic Resources, the Department of Agriculture, being Undersecretary for Fisheries, do you have the assets to check on what's going on? Or do you rely on the Philippine Navy and the Philippine Coast Guard?
That's a very good question. What's happening now is to be supported by informed decision making, you know, and we know how far the technology has given us this power to be informed and to know what is happening. The Bureau of Fisheries and Aquatic Resources has invested on the integrated marine monitoring system that allows us to have our eye on the sky and be able to process this information in the context of law enforcement as well as compliance to illegal, unreported, unregulated fishing. So this information allows us to appreciate what is happening at the ground, but having this information on hand. Alam naman natin na ang pangisdaan is rules-based engagement, and so we have to be armed with information. So these tools are readily available, as well as the project also that was done by NGOs with USAID in terms of looking at the use of light, which used to be a facility to monitor yung ating what do you call this? It's a technology that was primarily used to monitor the what is happening in the environment, but now has been giving us information as well on the presence of these fishing vessels at night. So the technology is called VEERS. So this information, these tools are available now to help us manage the ecosystem's approach to fisheries management.
Yeah. Madam Undersecretary, I have to ask you this. I have been writing for several agencies over the past decades. And usually it's part of my story to come up with value, either in peso or in dollar terms. If you have to look into the fishery resources in the South China Sea within our exclusive economic zone, would you have any idea of the volume and the cost based on the quality of fish in the area?
Well, that there was a study done actually on that by CIFDEC and by Dr. Carol, and it gives us the information on the contribution of the fishing industry in terms of the being at the global center of marine biodiversity. Mr. Carpenter mentions that 60% of the world's known fishes, as well as those over 300 species of corals, are found in the halfway between the provinces of Batangas and Mindoro and the Verde Island Passage. So they estimate that the contribution is around I think this is not updated, but it just highlights our country's shelf and coral reef, which covers 18.46 million hectares and 2.7 million hectares as well. So the coastline stretches to as far as 36,289 kilometers. There are studies now being undertaken just to update this. And we hope that in your succeeding meetings, we can share this extensively.
Very good.
You know, my apologies, but I just came in as a undersecretary recently, and there's really so much things to know about our fisheries sector. And as we were pitching to our colleagues in the government, this will be our bounce back and recovery mechanism, because the fisheries sector is the blessing that is being given to the Philippines, and we should be able to harness this in as much as it can sustain our it can meet our need for present and sustain the needs of the future generation. So there's just so much to discover, and I think that's the reason why everybody's now congregating in this part of the world. Melo.
Yeah. There's a question from our friend Vic Paterno. Would the BFAR or DA know how many Philippine fishing vessels operate in the South China Sea? Or of these vessels, what gears or target species used and caught?
Yeah. In terms of the country's commercial fishing vessels, it is divided into three again, no? Small scale, which makes use of passive or active gear and utilizing fishing vessels of 3.1 to 20 gross tonnage. Medium scale utilizes active gears and vessels of 20.1 to 150 gross tonnage. And large scale utilizes active gears and vessels of more than 150 gross tonnage. Our municipal fishers use less than 3 gross tonnage, and they operate within the 15-kilometer shoreline. In terms of the registry, it was stated that there are around 3,000. The total number of registered fishing vessels municipal is 247,146 as of 2017, and that for the commercial, it reaches around 3,000, close to 3,300. 3,473 vessels that were licensed by BFAR. So they are using gear such as ring net, roll, hand line, purseine, bag net, and long line.
Okay. All right. Maybe in our future discussions, we can come up with some PowerPoint presentations for the into. Right. Okay. Si Jonathan Dixon had his experience. No, he's a fishing technology expert. What have you noticed? Ano yung mga ginagamit ng ating mga mangingisda compared to Chinese, Vietnamese fishermen in the South China Sea? Yes, Jonathan.
Sorry doon sa disconnection kanina, sir.
Yeah.
Actually itong West Philippine Sea o kaya yung tinatawag na South China Sea ay nalibot ko na lahat po yan. At nakasama po ako sa mga fishing operations. So noong 1970s, actually mayroon ng may isang company sa Zamboanga na nag-ooperate but seasonal lang ang operation nila. Ito po yung Mar Fishing Company na nagkakan po ng tuna. Nandyan lang po sila mga months ng April and May. But at that time, sir, napakarami talaga ang tuna dyan. Then, wala naman kami, sir, nakikita ng mga foreigners dyan pa noon. 1970s, 1980s, 1990s, wala pa mga nakikita dyan na pumupunta ng mga foreigners, mga poachers. Then, mayroon ang company din na nag-ooperate din noon, sir, dyan ay yung Prabal, yung gumagamit po ng Muroami. So yung Prabal nakabase po dyan sa Nabutas, napakalaking kumpanya ito. Gumagamit po siya ng Muroami. Kaya lang po ito ay pinagbawal natin dahil nga yung destruction ng fishing gear sa mga coral reefs. So sa area na ito, sir, napakarami po ang resources natin sa fisheries.
Okay.
Marami po dyan ang oceanic squid, na yun po yung inuhuli ngayon ng mga Chinese oceanic squid. Then marami po tayo mga isdang bato, itong mga dalagang bukid. Diyan po lahat nanggagaling yung isda ng dalagang bukid at saka mga labahita. Kaya pag nandun po kayo sa Puerto Princesa, yung mga daing doon na labahita nanggagaling po sila diyan sa West Philippine Sea. Ngayon po, lately lang itong pagpasok ngayon ng mga foreign fishing vessels diyan sa area na yan. One time nakasama din ako sa seismic survey ng Department of Energy. Nag-survey po kami dyan kung saan po yung area na mayroon pong langis. At mga nakikita namin ng mga fishing boat ay galing din sa Vietnam. Meron din po tayong mga fishing boat na galing General Santos na gumagamit po ng payaw. So napakalaki po yung resources po natin dyan na dapat pangalagaan po natin. Ngayon, pag titignan po natin doon sa findings ng Karagatan Patrol, ito po yung pag-determine po ng strong lights during night time. Makikita po natin na saturated po ng fishing activities dyan po sa West Philippine Sea. Ang karagatan po natin ngayon, sir, ay nahahati po ng itong fishing ground natin. Meron bagong classification. Ito po yung tinatawag na Fisheries Management Areas. Nandito po sa West Philippine Sea, yung Fisheries Management Area number 5 at saka number 6. So, ina-identify po nila ngayon kung ano po yung mga resources na dapat nating i-protect. So, ongoing po yung management measures po na ginagawa nila. So dito po sa issue naman po sa Scarborough Shoal, ang mga nangingisda po yan po, sir, ay mga kasama natin na taga Zambales, Pangasinan at La Union. So doon po sila nangingisda. Marami pong isda doon kagaya po ng mga nahuhuli nila ng mga talakitok, mga bisogong malalaki. Ngayon hindi na po sila nakakapunta dahil nga po doon sa pagbabawal ng isang bansa po dyan. So napakalaking value po at saka bulyo po ng isda ang nawala ngayon dito sa mga fisherman dito sa bandang La Union, Pangasinan at saka Zambales. Kasama na po dyan ang Bataan.
Okay. Pero nabanggit nyo, Jonathan, na 1970s pa lang, umiikot na kayo sa karagatan. Ano, elementary grade pa kayo nun?
Kag-graduate ko lang po sa University of the Philippines College of Fisheries, sir. At saka pagkatapos ko ng graduation kasi, sir, tanggap po ako sa Bureau of Fisheries. Yan na po yung trabaho ko po, sir, sa Bureau of Fisheries. Sumasakay po sa mga fishing vessels.
Okay, all right. May problema yata yung signal ng ating kaibigan si Commodore Armand Balilo. He was already here with us twice na, pero nawawala siya. Okay. Let's give it another try. Pumasok na siya kanina eh. I was about to call him. May tanong na kaagad sa kanya, pero Murphy's Law. Okay. Dennis, anong tingin mo? Malaki na wala sa atin doon sa hindi pagpasok ng ating mga mangingisda doon sa Baho de Masinloc?
Opo. I think yung isang tinitingnan namin dyan na hindi masyadong nagiging pronounced sa conversation about the West Philippine Sea. Resource use conflict, no? Hindi lang siya geopolitical na issue, kundi I think may kinalaman din siya dun sa pag-intensify ng resource use conflict between and among countries, no? And it has something to do rin po siguro dun sa general status ng resources sa buong mundo, no? May mga pag-aaral na as nadideplete yung resources natin near shore, ang tendency is to lumayo yung mga mangingisda natin. And we see that itong paglapit ng China sa ating teritoryo ay isang indication na may problema yung resources natin, hindi lang sa China siguro kundi sa ibang mundo din. Sa atin, nakikita na natin yan, no? As sa mga municipal capture fishers natin na dati ay nakakuha sila ng magandang huli sa nearshore fisheries, ngayon ay mas lumalayo na yung kanilang operation, mas matagal yung kanilang operation at mas nagkukonsumo ng kanilang gasolina sa pangingisda. No? So as more and more na nadideplete yung ating nearshore fisheries, yung tendency is lumayo, no, at maghanap ng relatively magandang fishing grounds. So yun sa mga tinitingnan namin.
All right. General Flores, I know you're still with us. Pakibukas lang po ng camera. From an environmentalist's point of view, whether we like it or not, ang issue rito ay pagkain. For a government to feed its people well, it has to look for resources. And the South China Sea is, teeming with marine life. Don't you think yung issue ng environment magkakaroon ng political color because China will have to feed 1 billion people. We also have to feed 110 million people. Ano po ang inyong pananaw?
Consistent naman sa mga actions ng Philippines yan eh. Ang ayaw lang natin is yung methodologies that can be destructive. Sa yung Philippine Marine Sanctuary Strategy, realize that we should be strengthening or at least enriching more our coral reef formations because they really are the places where our mga marine life actually start or at least support those coming from the mga species of fish na nanggagaling perhaps sometimes to the littoral areas. Pupunta sila dyan para manginain. And the strategy of the Philippines is to establish more marine protected areas, including the Kalayaan Island Group. Kasi it is really very rich. And therefore, it has to be sustained. And this agenda, the establishment of a marine sanctuary or a protected area, is envisioned by the country to be adopted by the whole ASEAN. And in fact, China would be very welcome to support this activity because it is not only the Philippines that will benefit from this marine protected area, but virtually the whole world and even the exotic fish market of China and other countries. So from our viewpoint kasi, yung sustenance of the coral reef formation is very fundamental because it's where the smaller fish are sustaining the larger fish and so on and so forth until it reaches the size that is now being captured to feed our populace. So yun po ang tingin ng Haribon doon, and we are warning everybody that once certain species of fish disappear, then magkakaroon ng serious dislocation in the food chain, and therefore it can result into something existential. When that happens, we do not like to reach that point. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Mr. Ambassador, Ambassador Encomienda, anong strategy ang kailangan gawin ng Pilipinas? Will diplomacy still work with China para maibsan yung pangamba ng ating mga kababayan at ng mga mangingisda?
Well, on the question, Melo, about will diplomacy work with China, it cannot possibly be a no, because we are both states, sovereign states, and states transact business through negotiations and diplomacy. And that's why yung mahaba kong intervention kanina, I pointed out that we tried that already with Jomsre, and China was very, very enthusiastic to join it. But we, on the Philippine side, aborted it on the last minute. Now, yung tungkol sa protected areas, the scientists between the of the Philippines and Vietnam in that phase 1 of Jomsre, in their final meeting, agreed, the scientists of both countries agreed to recommend to their governments the establishment of a trans-border marine peace park in the disputed areas. And this is recorded. This is in the proceedings. We transmitted it to the governments, but there was no take up from there. Now, on this point, I'm glad that we came to this point, Melo, because I mentioned the fact before that the South China Sea is what you call enclosed or semi-enclosed sea. Under Part 9 of UNCLOS, which is rules-based, therefore, littoral states of enclosed and semi-enclosed seas. Well, okay, there is a blip here sa language because the UNCLOS provision says these countries bordering enclosed or semi-enclosed seas may cooperate. But you know that may is actually a polite language to use with sovereign states. But the scientific part of it, it cannot be may. It is a compelled cooperation. Why? Part of the big problem in the South China Sea and fisheries is not really that our fishermen wants to go to the Scarborough Shoal. China is preventing it. Our fishermen wants to go to Pag-asa Island and China is preventing. No. Way back in the, who was that gentleman who said that since the 70s, that problem has been there. Yes, but when I became very active as direct assignment on the Department of Foreign Affairs, what I call the Maritime and Ocean Affairs Center, way back then, the fishing effort there is not only between China and Philippines, and not especially only about the Philippines being prevented by China. The history there is number one. Thailand has a very big fishing effort in the South China Sea. Vietnam also. And China, of course, the biggest fishing effort from China is based in Hong Kong and Guangzhou, you know. And as I said, China, Vietnam, Thailand, but if a few others. But if we talk about yung mga medyo magulo dyan, we are not saints, Melo. I mean, I will tell you this, that a few months after President Cory Aquino took over, I was charged with, not on the scientific side, but on the operational side, as well. I was charged to head a mission, a C-130 mission, to fetch our Filipino fishermen from Kota Kinabalu, because they were arrested by Malaysian authorities for illegal fishing in Malaysia. Okay, number two, in the Philippines, in our own archipelagic waters, you read the newspapers. Since I retired, I don't have this data anymore. I just go by newspapers. Even Vietnamese vessels have been arrested near the Tawi-Tawi area and Sulu Sea area. These are Vietnamese vessels. And of course, Taiwan has a very big fishing effort here in the South China Sea. Let me mention something about Taiwan. During the time of President Ramos, Taiwan was given a so-called fishing corridor in the north. I think the lady undersecretary should look into this just for historical purposes. If just for historical purposes, Taiwan was considered a fishing corridor in the north. Now that was removed when the Fisheries Act of sponsored by Senator Angara was enacted into law. That fishing corridor of Taiwan was removed, but there continued to be pressure on us to restore it. Now, that's about Taiwan. Another thing about Taiwan, I'm glad that it is the lady undersecretary who is in the picture now, because I'm really trying to address her. Southern bluefin tuna, as the lady undersecretary knows, is among the most expensive tuna in the world. They're, as they would say, it's worth a Mercedes-Benz if you catch one. You know.
Yeah.
Now, we have southern bluefin tuna. They're caught normally in the Australian seas, but they do breed. I mean, please, I have to make this caution, especially with the lady undersecretary, because I'm not a marine scientist. I learned these things when I was heading the marine. Yes.
Okay.
In fact, southern bluefin tuna breed in our waters, you know, and then going back to Taiwan, during up to the beginning the year 2000, our own country was denying that the Pacific bluefin tuna, northern Pacific bluefin tuna, can be found in our waters there. We were denying it. But Taiwan has been fishing for that in the other parts of our country. And in fact, it's very easy for Taiwan because the bluefin tuna they catch in that area, dinadala lang doon sa yung kanilang isang port, which is in the southern part of Taiwan. So, but I am actually entering into an area where the problems really is on our part. Just imagine, we deny that there is northern bluefin tuna out there in our northern shores.
Yes.
Whereas Secretary Alcala disputed this because when we went to a fish market in the Ilocos area, Secretary Alcala pointed to us, this is
The bluefin tuna.
yung bata, anong tawag din sa mga newly born fish? Yes, may term dyan eh. But bluefin tuna. But why is BFAR? We challenged BFAR at the time. Why is BFAR at the time denying that there is northern bluefin tuna? Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Ambassador, very good. If I recall it right, in exchange for that corridor, the Philippines got 5 boats from Taiwan.
Yeah, Melo, may I respond to our
Yes,
good
please.
ambassador? Yeah.
Yes, please.
Thank you for pointing the as FBR would say, people who don't learn from history are bound to repeat the same mistakes.
Yes.
So for the information of everyone, I was once working with then Senator Shahani, and we've met with Secretary Alcala when he was then DNR Secretary. Is one of the luminaries in the fisheries sector, and I remember him coming from Silliman University. That's how important the fisheries sector was, because championing it in the Lingayen Gulf. If you remember, there was an LGCAMC, Lingayen Gulf Commission, which was supposed to really protect the Lingayen Gulf area. It's one of the commissions created under by the former President Ramos to grow, the corridors, the North Luzon Growth Corridor or North Quad. If you remember that, Mr. Ambassador, was one of those measures really to develop the potential of Northern Luzon, considering that when you fly to Taiwan, it's just 45 minutes away from Ilocos Norte to Kaohsiung. And truly, there were efforts to develop that area, given the technological advancement of Taiwan at that time. And but this idea on transborder marine fish parks is something that we should maybe take a look at, because now that we are in the Philippines, we are already strengthening our fisheries management area or FMAs. And this is basically delineated bodies of water with based on approximation of fish stocks and their boundaries. So nandyan po yung distribution and considerations of fisheries management governance using science-based participatory and transparent monitoring and management based on ecosystems approach. So this is one important element in terms of internally managing our resources, because it now takes into account the localization or decentralization of decision making based on science-based rules. So it brings in it puts the Philippines into 12 FMAs. And truly, the participation of the different sectors, LGUs, municipal fishers, aquaculture, academe, NGO, indigenous peoples, traders, etc., is recognized as part of the FMA management board. Why am I saying this? Because, we cannot be too centralized in our management of our resources. That's the reason, that's the beauty of the devolution, because we take cognizance, on the value of decision making at the ground level. But in terms of fisheries management, we're contextualizing it through FMAs. And now that we are looking on a bigger scale of partnering or collaboration in terms of I think we also have these mariculture parks, in the past. So these were one of those venues, to develop our aquaculture programs, But it takes really to strengthen first our internal control and understand the context of overall fisheries management. It's not just like piche or small time.
Yeah.
That's why the context of the whole is more than the sum of its parts is something that we should be able to apply in terms of fisheries management. And I'm glad that I'm talking to the luminaries here, experienced people in the fisheries sector, and you're all welcome to Melo, maybe to have this follow through, so we can come up with a more programmatic approach to this kind of fisheries management. And thank you for putting this together. I just appreciate the exchange of ideas and the minds that are present in today's discussion.
These are the brightest minds that we gathered today. Yes, Mr. Ambassador, you were about to say something.
Well, a few points taking off from the lady undersecretary. I'm sorry, her name is reflected in the screen, but I cannot read it. So I problem. Anyway, I'm glad to hear, in fact, that she worked with Secretary Alcala, and she is what we call in the DF career. So she understands a lot of the things. But first, yung maliit-liit na bagay, because I took note that the lady undersecretary is from Pangasinan. But one time we had a conference just a meeting actually in Dagupan, and what woke us up in the 2 nights we were there in the early morning is dynamite fishing. So, I mean, this is small things that the lady undersecretary referred to, that we have to get our act together, Number 2, this use of the so-called payaos, because, again, I'm not a marine scientist, but I process this through running the Maritime and Ocean Affairs Center. Payaos are essentially, really, as they say, not environment friendly because they attract fish. And at the time I retired, actually, it was under Bifar Gingona who was coming in, and he informed the meeting of the Maritime Breakfast Forum that in fact the Bifar is putting two lines of fish aggregating devices, one closer to shore to serve our artisanal fishermen, and another line closer towards the area of Scarborough Shoal to serve the commercial fishers. But I made the point then that, but essentially, a fish aggregating device I heard is not environment friendly or fisheries friendly, as we can say it. A third point I want to make is about the going back to the transborder marine. It's not fish park, Undersecretary. It's transborder marine peace park, because we plan that the scientists wanted to address the whole gamut of issues relating to the marine environment, including pollution, but again, not no take zone, as Secretary Alcala would say it. And we were happy with that conclusion because right now, the late Secretary talked about the fish management areas, fisheries management areas. But way back when Secretary Alcala was working with us, we began a project on a catalog of marine protected areas in the Philippines. Secretary Alcala decided that we must begin with as volume 1 with the Visayas, because it was the Visayas that had the more of the marine protected areas. That was completed, but that was the first study. That was how many years ago? Then he began a second volume on the ones in Mindanao. The third volume was, which is Northern Luzon, was never done, you know. But I point that out because we have these new vehicles now, like Fisheries Management Area. Secretary Alcala, as the late Undersecretary knows, authored the NIPAS law, you know, and that created the marine protected areas, and that's why he wanted to document what has been done up to that part. But let me close with this. That was very important to us, but I'm sorry to shift to a security aspect that I raised the last time, in which I suggested to Romel, Professor Banlawi, that we can work together, because that is related to archipelagic sea lanes passage. Our received wisdom, and there is a bill in the Congress right now to designate archipelagic sea lanes passage. When I was new, I think this was in the year 2000, we took that into account, designation of archipelagic sea lanes passage, as received wisdom from our delegation to the UNCLOS. But the more we look at the broader picture of maritime awareness, maritime concerns of the Philippines, we decided that we should not designate archipelagic sea lanes, but we can document and the program and have a good documentation on the marine environment in the Philippines. And then this is my last part, we can allow archipelagic sea lanes passage monitored, pilotage if necessary, because the Australians have done that have been doing that already in 2 areas, pilotage if necessary, for ships transiting on archipelagic sea lanes passage, to be aware and be monitored that they will not, they can go anywhere, one part of the ISIS to the other, but never to always to be careful about those marine protected areas. Anyway, these are connected about the environment, about fisheries, about security aspect on archipelagic sea lanes passage, but this is precisely what Our Lady Undersecretary said, you cannot compartmentalize our issues, maritime issues, as an archipelagic state in the most strategic part of the world. Thank you.
Okay. Very well, very well. Let's look forward. What can we expect? Anong doable in the terms of President Fidel Ramos? Ano yung doable natin? Let's start with Jonathan before we close our discussions today. Yes, Jonathan? Ano yung pwedeng magawa para maayos natin ang sitwasyon? Yes, Jonathan.
Hi, sir. Dapat protektahan po natin ang ating fisheries resources sa West Philippine Sea. Dapat magtulong-tulungan po lahat ng mga law enforcement agencies natin, kagaya ng Department of National Defense, Philippine Coast Guard, Philippine Navy, Department of Foreign Affairs, para matugunan po itong pagpasok po ng mga ibang bansa na nangingisda po sa ating teritoryo. Napakalaki po ang nawawala sa mga Filipino fishermen natin. So sa food security, dapat matugunan po yan. Kasi po, nababawasan po ang ating fish production galing po sa West Philippine Sea. Yung dati pong nahuhuli ng mga small commercial fishing boat natin ay nawala na po. Ngayon po, sa tingin ko, dapat matulungan din yung mga hindi na po nakapunta sa Scarborough Shoal na mga fisherman natin galing po sa Pangasinan at saka Zambales, kasama na po ang La Union, na tulungan sila na kung hindi na sila makahuli po ng mga malalaking isdang bato kagaya po ng talakito, bisogo, matugunan po ng ating gobyerno ang pagbibigay ng mga payaw. Kasi po ang payaw po ay magandang ilagay po dito sa West Ilocos Coast hanggang Zambales Coast dahil po napakalalim po yung dagat po dyan at marami pong mga tuna. Pwede pong aside from tuna, meron din po mga small pelagics na pwedeng mag-operate yung mga small ring netters natin na mga taga Zambales na nagko-contribute din ng isda sa bandang Zambales.
Okay.
So sa parte naman po ng West Philippine Sea dito sa West Palawan, protektahan po natin ang ating mga coral reefs. Ito mga foreigners na nangingisda po ngayon dyan. Alam po natin na pati sea turtle, sinuhuli nila. Kung makakita man sila ng dolphin, sinasama na rin po nila. Kasi pagkain po sa kanilang lugar kasi yan, hindi naman po kagaya sa atin na pinoprotektahan po natin ang mga sea turtles natin at saka mga dolphin at saka mga other endangered species. So, yun po, paigtingin lang po yung law enforcement natin. At
Okay.
saka siguro, kung makukuha po sa diplomasya, so diplomasya po yan. Kaya lang, sa tingin ko, parang mahirap po yung diplomasya ngayon na nangyayari po. Salamat po.
Okay. Pero may isang magaling na senador, ang sabi, yun naman ikang isda, walang passport eh, no? Kaya sino ba nagsabi no?
Naku,
Senador. Ha? Eh,
I
wala
said
bang
that in
passport yung isda. Anyway, Mr. Vic Paterno, what are your thoughts? What could we do together as a people being part of a country called the Philippines? What are we to do? Mr. Paterno? You're still there? Yes. What can we do? Yes, please. Paki-unmute lang po.
Yeah.
Go.
We have to develop our offshore fisheries, okay, in the South China Sea. Okay, that means having bigger vessels, okay, and having the right fishing gear. Okay, practically most of our small fishermen or medium-scale fishermen are still fishing bangkas, using bangkas, and these are not really suitable for open water, open sea operation. The range is limited, okay, and you do not have enough gear. Unlike the Taiwanese, they have developed very good small vessels, even less than 40 feet, okay, that go all the way from Taiwan, all the way to Australia and back. And they're crewed only by how many people? 4 people? Okay? We should develop that capability. Unless we physically occupy our EEZ through fisheries, okay, we keep on losing territory. Okay.
Mhm. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Dennis?
Yes, sir. Thank you. I think that the statement would be we'll have to lay out our biases to the municipal or small scale fisheries. No, I think the government should further recognize the contribution of small scale fisheries in terms of food security. So this can be done through appropriate policies and programs, policies wherein they would recognize the preferential rights of municipal or small scale fisheries over the use of coastal resources. And in terms of program, of course, again, sustaining our positive development in terms of addressing poverty incidents in fisherfolk through appropriate programs from the government. That's all, sir. Thank you.
Very well. General Flores, please. Your thoughts? Paki-unmute lang po. Yan, go. Yes, please.
I'm glad that we are looking at it in a more inclusive manner. Kasi yung concerns natin sa food, fisheries, can get lost in the strategic considerations of our country. And so we have to elevate this matter, this concern, kasi hindi naman kailangan zero-sum game yan eh. In other words, we can communicate with China as regards what perhaps can be done to ensure the security of our coral reefs and the fish and the maritime wildlife that contribute to our own to feed the whole region and in fact some of the other countries in the world. So in essence, what we're suggesting is that yung presence of China could be in our areas sometimes is actually very contentious and as such if we should be very careful not to be drawn into a generalized statement of perhaps security concern or competition among superpowers. What we're saying is that the Philippines has its own national interest objectives, and we should be able to define what these national security objectives are, and try to flesh out what can be done differently from that of the other issues and concerns. Thank you.
Very well. Thank you very much. Mr. Ambassador, your thoughts?
Well, firstly, again, I want to address, I'm sorry I cannot get the name of the lady undersecretary. She worked with Secretary Alcala. Please get in touch with him. And because really, there's a lot to learn from him. Last night, I was on the phone with him that we have to work together on this again. Now, the other thing, my last word is taking off from the comment of General Flores. That has always been our attitude since I took charge of ocean concerns for the DFA as secretariat to a cabinet level committee way back in the year 2000. And yes, as General Flores said, and also the lady undersecretary, we cannot compartmentalize things. Now, even security issues are all part of it. Food security, strategic security, and everything. So my last message, however, in terms of direction is, and address this to General Flores as a PCFR and of course the lady undersecretary, look, let us make a big focus on number one, part 4 of UNCLOS, which defines the Philippines as an archipelagic state. And being an archipelagic, okay, we keep mouthing mantra like, an archipelagic state, Philippines has 10 times or 100 times or 1,000 times more water than land. It does not mean anything. But UNCLOS provides the governance structure internationally, from which we could also have to start beginning our own part of it. UNCLOS Part 4 on the archipelagic state. That will define our national interest, as General Flores used the word. The second part is Part 4 of UNCLOS, which is about cooperation, joint development, and joint cooperation in the case of enclosed, semi-enclosed seas. Because yun na lang sinabi, Melo, it was in your program that I mentioned that fish have no passports. And
Yeah.
and, and really, I mean, how do you manage an area like the South China Sea and even the wider beyond the South China Sea with so many littoral states and one fish fleeting one to the other? How do you? Okay, as I said, let us come together to study. Let's have a study group on UNCLOS Part 4 and UNCLOS Part 9 that will define our national interests and the direction where we are, where we should be heading, looking at our maritime interests. Not only fish, not only but maritime awareness in general, not maritime domain awareness, maritime awareness in general. That's very important to us. So UNCLOS Part 9 uh, calls on countries. We have begun that with Vietnam and beginning with China. It was aborted. Your question, Melo, I think if you ask me, the first thing we should do is look at the Jomsre projects with Vietnam and going to China. And again, my last word to the Underlady Undersecretary, talk to Secretary Alcala. Thank you. Thank you.
Very well. Madam Undersecretary Cheryl Marie Caballero, please.
Okay.
Yes, thank you, Melo. Thank you, Ambassador. Just a correction. I work with former Senator Shahani, Leti Ramos Shahani, and she's one of the close friend of Secretary Alcala. They go to the same church.
Can I interject?
Yes.
I will just to interject. Yeah, I may stand corrected on that. But okay, Secretary Alcala, Senator Shahani, I say this as a tribute to her. She is very aware of the Philippines as an archipelagic state. And in fact, this is something I may just say which never gained ground or resonate during her time. We have to establish a strong relationship with Vladivostok, you know, because that is an area about marine. But that's another story.
Yeah.
But yes, I was working closely with Senator Shahani. Don't forget he was a former ambassador.
Yes,
Thank you.
yes.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yes, thank you. Yes, the brilliance in foreign relations is something that I admire from the former senator. But truly, the exposure in terms of what we can do for the Philippine Ocean is something that we've learned in that experience. So now that we are given this task, we have to, think that we have to look at our participation in the global economy. We have to, of course, as you were saying, look at the UNCLOS as our guiding principle in terms of governance mechanism and to act local. That means we have to establish our rules-based management and make it inclusive, participatory, sustainable, and scalable. Because only by then that we can really talk apple to apple and make objective decisions. Of course, we have to look at win-win strategies, not to compromise our, sovereignty, but to look at areas wherein we will be able to manage the complexities as well as look at complementations. These are, big words, motherhood statement, but there are already some mechanisms on how to go about it. And locally, the FMA management, which has been one of the wonderful output in this administration, takes cognizance of that mechanism for participation and inclusivity. Now that we know that we have a total number of 294,730 fishermen in the West Philippine Sea, that's the combined 1, 2 NCR, 4A, and Mimaropa, the measure that will be undertaken should factor them in because end of the day, they will be affected as well, not only in terms of our way to address food security, but also the context of managing poverty. Partnership with local government unit is very important because they run the ordinances and the mechanisms on how to go about this. The win-win solution should allow them also to see the bigger picture and how important their legislations and governance and law enforcement mechanism is. We have 928 municipalities and cities that have shorelines. So the experience or the case study and mechanism to really develop the West Philippine Sea is something that we can offer maybe in the short term. So this kind of discussion is something that we like to inject as we are coming up with a measure, no, to address it in a win-win, in a more sustainable mechanism, so that end of the day, all these best ideas are properly digested and contextualized to come up with a meaningful strategy for the West Philippine Sea. So that would be all, Melo, and I thank you all for these wonderful inputs. And we look forward to meeting you again in the future discussions.
Secretary, do you now have a copy of the statement of the National Task Force for the West Philippine Sea?
I have, but I am not cleared to read it. But they will be releasing it through the PCOO. Let me just get you a snapshot of
Yes,
of this.
that's very exciting.
Yeah. Well, the Philippine Communications Office will release the entire document, but it takes cognizance of the role of the National Task Force on West Philippine Sea to assert the Philippine sovereignty and the sovereign rights and our jurisdiction over the Kalayaan Group of Islands and West Philippine Sea. We are strengthening our measures to make our presence felt and ensure that the Philippines continuous appreciation on how it can protect its area through the support that it's getting from international partners is also given cognizance of as we take adherence to rules-based order consistent with international law, including the UNCLOS as affirmed by the 2016 Arbitral Award. The Philippines and neither the nor the international community will never accept China's assertion of its so-called indisputable integrated sovereignty over almost all of the South China Sea, or part of which is the West Philippine Sea. These are just vignettes, no, of the text. So, but that basically gives you the highlight on what that statement would be in terms of really positioning our ourselves and asserting our rights in the area. Of course, in the fisheries sector, we always would be there to support our fisher folk and make sure that they are protected as provided by the law.
Okay, very well. Yes, General Flores, you'd like to say something before we say?
Meron ako idadagdag, Sir Melo.
Please.
Na-mention ni Dennis kanina yung geostrategic importance of the Philippines, and we also welcome the importance that the Philippines is being ascribed to by each and every speaker. But I just like to mention this because before we even became independent in 1898, meaning bago natin natalo yung Spain and declare our the first republic of Asia, Graciano Lopez Haina, the propagandist of the La Solidaridad, already described accurately the geostrategic importance of the Philippines. And he said that with our country between two strategic canals, Panama and Suez, these canals give access to the whole world virtually.
Mm-hmm.
And our closeness to China and India, and our country being located amidst other countries with similarly rich resources and with a good commercial relation with the United States, it cannot but rid itself of its frustrations.
Mhm.
That was done more than 120 years ago. And
Yeah.
I hope we will be able to find a solution of our this is small problem, but should be included in the totality of our issues and concerns. Thank you.
Very well.
Yeah. Melo, before I forget, I just wanted to highlight that BFAR is now packaging programs for our municipal fisher folk and artisanal fisher folk. We know that for time and again, poverty rate in the fisheries sector is really high. And we take cognizance of that, and with the guidance of the Secretary of been designing, and we will do so more that we have strong partners in the NGO group as well as the pharmacies. So this thing is something that we should really address, because even if we have these levels of cooperation, if we don't address the elephant in the room, which is poverty, and which is really the accessibility of these resources to our municipal fisher folk, then that will always be a challenge. So
Yeah.
I would just like to emphasize that aspect as well. Thank you.
Very good. Pero it appears that it is not only the elephant in the room that we should take cognizance of. We should also take cognizance of the presence of the dragon in the room.
Yeah, which could be more dangerous.
But
No,
according
maybe it really depends on the point of view. Yeah.
yes, of course. But according to some friends, well, one of them is the former Chinese ambassador to Manila. He said, uh, "Whom would you trust? A cousin who's far away, or a neighbor who is just close by?" Anyway, let's find out what will happen. But there's one man by the name of John Ruskin who said, "No human being, however great or powerful, was ever so free as a fish." So thank you very much, Undersecretary Cheryl Marie Caballero, Ambassador Alberto Encomienda, General Alejandro Flores, Mr. Dennis Calvan, nakasama rin natin si Jonathan Dixon, at kanina si Manny Paterno. So we will have another topic, another discussion. Yung mga payaw, pag-usapan din natin yan. Pero you know what worries me a lot is the documentary on Netflix. It's entitled Seaspiracy. It's about the tuna and the whale and the like. Maybe we can talk about it because we are a tuna consuming country too. Thank you very much. Stay safe and have a meaningful Holy Week. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank